Hey everybody, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to have a look at Kaspa. Now, it's always a nightmare to make a video on Kaspa because there's such little data and information to pull from, but I'm going to try to do my best to maybe point out a few different interesting pieces of this chart and hopefully have some sort of an idea at the end where Kaspa might be heading. Now, one thing I want to say before I get into the chart, I do want to point out a little bit of news or an important event that happened for Kaspa, and I don't usually like to include these in TA. I like to focus completely on price action, but here I want to make an exception, and I want to point out that Kaspa has moved from an extremely low altcoin, from like top 500 cryptocurrency all the way to rank 37, a top 50 cryptocurrency in the space of 2 years. Now, this isn't the most uncommon thing in the crypto space. A lot of cryptocurrencies obviously have humble beginnings, even if those beginnings aren't very long and they suddenly rocket up to top 20. But to me, what's more impressive is Kaspa predominantly did this during the bear market. I mean, here, where it put in its most impressive price performance over the space of 6 months, Kaspa went up a crazy amount, something like 4,000, I think. 2,000%, sorry, excuse me, not that crazy. But if you want to include this high, we will include that as well very quickly. 5,000%. Okay, so I wasn't quite wrong. Huge moves to the upside, basically, during its first 6 months, during the pre-halving year, which is historically pretty bad for crypto, but also not super uncommon with a very low alt cap coin. Anything can happen if there's enough people buying it, price will go up. However, Kaspa was introduced to the mainstream of the crypto space, I'll say, during around the 2023 era, just before, sort of when this peak came in, this all-time high for Kaspa. This is when a lot of eyes were put on it. And this is because Kaspa went from a GPU mined coin to an ASIC mined coin. And if that means nothing to you, you're going to have to watch another video, but in very, very basics, some cryptos are mined with proof of work, some cryptos are mined with proof of stake, or some variation of it. Proof of work is where a lot of computers try guess a random number, and if they guess correctly, they are rewarded with cryptocurrency. This is how Bitcoin works. This is how Kaspa works. This is how Ethereum worked before its merge. And now, instead of it being mined by normal everyday computers, ones you might have at home, ones you might be watching this video on, it's now mined by specifically designed machines only to mine Kaspa. So these machines are produced and made and sold with the sole purpose of mining Kaspa. It's the only thing they can do, but they do it extremely efficiently and they produce and mine a lot of Kaspa. And it's the same with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is mainly an ASIC mined coin. You can mine it with a GPU, but you might as well try mine it with a hamster on a wheel. Like, your chances of making any money are, close to zero. And in fact, you will lose a lot of money, most likely. It's now turned into the same thing with Kaspa, and this was the point around this time when this happened. And of course, this led to the extreme parabolic movement that Kaspa experienced over 2023. And while it not being as impressive as its previous sort of move, it was still extremely crazy. So overall, Kaspa has gone from close to 1,000th of a cent. It's now gone up to 10 cents. And as you can see, that percentage move is just unfathomable. Crazy. So again, a very impressive move from Kaspa. This both worries me and impresses me, because if Kaspa can move 63,000%, how much higher can it go from there is what worries me. Has Kaspa burnt out? Can it really go any higher after a 63,000% move up? And that's what I'm going to maybe take a look at today. Another thing we'll get into it now actually. We can see that Kaspa all-time high around 15 cents. And we are now currently at 10 cents. Now, it's not too uncommon for Kaspa to have pullbacks. We've seen it plenty of times, and we've seen much more severe pullbacks. So a 33% move back here. Here, we had a 70% correction over the space of 2 months, which is nuts. But it just goes to show how, while it can seem only up during a lot of times, these coins can have serious corrections. I'm not saying that I expect Kaspa to have a serious correction. All I'm pointing out is that a lot of coins that started rallying early on, and what springs to mind mainly is Rune, Thorchain, a lot of those cryptos have now had a serious pullback over the last month, basically since mid-early December. Before even November time. And to me, in a way, I feel like they're almost a good predictor for where the market might go. Rune rallied along with Kaspa a few months before Solana and Avalanche and Cardano and Bitcoin all rallied. They were the first movers. And now they've had a bit of a pullback. So maybe you might say in a few weeks or a month or a couple of days, I don't know, these other big coins that followed the first movement of Rune, and Kaspa might also have a pullback. To remind you, Rune went to a high of $7. I mean, it started rallying back in July, Rune did. It went to a high of $7 and is now at about $4. I think it's $4 bang on. So it's also had a very similar move of like a 40% drop, or whatever that is, 35% drop. So maybe this is a local low for Kaspa. Maybe it keeps rocketing up. Very possible. I mean, we've seen it before. And again, it's a crypto that keeps climbing. Why can't it keep climbing? But just that huge staggering number of 63,000% suggests to me that it can't go much higher. Now, you know, if it had gone up 40,000%, I'd be saying the same thing. So it could very well go up to 80,000, 100,000. I have no way of knowing. Especially during a bull run year, I have no way of knowing. Like if you look at other alts like Cardano and stuff like that launched and were once priced like below a cent, and their all-time highs of $2, $3 sort of thing. XRP, similar story. Stuff like Litecoin, Bitcoin, similar story. You could argue it's very possible, but for all this to happen over a few years, I don't know. It's for you to make a decision on. The kind of main thing that the only thing I really wanted to talk about on this chart was the fact that we've gone back to this oscillation period. And the only time that I could find that really sort of pulled any similarities was this move back in 2022, where we sort of had a rally, found a range, moved above it, and then moved above, found another range, and then moved above that, came back down to the original second range, dropped below that, and then oscillated within this 2 that we made. And we can see that once we broke below, we stayed within the range for give or take 2 months, roughly, a little more, a little less. And if we take a quick look here, how long we've been under, how long before we actually closed below, we've been in about a month, just over. So if it's going to play out in a similar way, it could be 20 days. Again, there's no guarantee that it will play out in a similar way at all. We might have to wait until we come to the support line and then rally up like we did here. We see that we kept bouncing off and climbing, and then we broke above into another extreme rally. Talking about Bitcoin halving and what historically happens, we usually do see cryptos will usually explode on their Bitcoin pairs immediately after the halving. And if we take a look at Kaspa on its Bitcoin pair, you could maybe argue a similar thing could happen. I mean, we have this sort of wedge here that's closing and does suggest that we might have some sort of a pinch sooner or later. Again, very little price action to talk about here, even less data to be honest with you. But if we do take a look at, we'll go to Ethereum in a second, the Ethereum Bitcoin pair, to show what historically happens with altcoins after the halving, and often during the beginning of the halving year, altcoins do get some sort of a pump on their Bitcoin pairs. And it looks like potentially we could have a move like this from Kaspa. We are in a ascending wedge, which could result in an explosive move to the upside. It could result in us pushing down to the downside once we meet this resistance. It's been a resistance that Kaspa has had trouble breaking out of these last few months. Again, very limited data on the Bitcoin pair. If we do quickly jump to Bitcoin Ethereum and zoom out, we can see that back in 2020, once the year started, we had a really strong rally. And again, this basically went on until mid-February. What are we currently experiencing? The exact same thing. Started early January, went on until, well, we don't know yet, but possibly mid-February. We can see we have a little consolidation here where we oscillate for a few days. If we zoom back again to 2020, we can see a very similar thing played out here. We rallied up, had a little cool off, couple of days doing nothing, and then another rally up. It's very possible that we could see it play out in a very similar way where we have another rally up. I did originally say that we could potentially go down to 0.04, but I said it was very unlikely we will go lower than this. Now, I was expecting more volatility on the Ethereum Bitcoin pair, but it seems that it was a lot less volatile than I thought, and we've put in a double bottom here. Now, don't count your chickens before they've hatched, but I don't think we'll go too much lower here. And again, just this sudden revival on the Ethereum pair does signal that times are changing here, like we saw before. Now, however, you could say that this move also could be this one and not this one in the new year. It's up to you for interpretation. Again, this first move we did originally basically go back down and we saw a double bottom. Here we've had our double bottom just over a longer period of time. Whatever way you want to look at it, it does signal that Ethereum is at least going to spend time at these higher ranges and that it won't come down here again, if at all, and if it does, not for very long. It'll literally be a drop down and then another rally up if it wants to play out how it does before. Again, it does not have to play out like it did previously. But if we get back to Kaspa, God, we have such little data on Kaspa. If we get back to Kaspa, again on his Bitcoin pair, kind of nothing too much to say. And again, this one's going to be a quicker video just because there's not much to talk about at all. Again, strong moves up. We could see something like this play out after the halving, where after the halving, we often see a lot of altcoins rally on their Bitcoin pair, only to then pull back in an extreme way just as suddenly as they rallied up after the halving. So if you're a bit of a trader, you might want to move your BTC in some alts and then move your alts back into BTC once they have a rally. Again, that's something that if you're going to do, you should put a lot of research into. If we take a look at the bull market support band, we have barely anything here, but if we swap to the US dollar pair again and turn it on, excuse me, we can see that Kaspa has basically traded well above the bull market support band. And if we take a look back at where we were here, we can see that Kaspa actually bounced off the bull market support band and continued to rally up. And the last, it didn't come down to test it again for another third of a year, 130 days, basically 4 months. If we take a look at, Kaspa hasn't tested the bull market support band in a while, so it could be due a test, and it looks like we might see that. And in fact, this bull market support band does look like it's lining up again with this support line, so we could see a very similar move play out where we bounce off it again, or we might not bounce. There might be general fear. I think the fear and greed index has been coming down a bit, not that that really predicts price too well, but we could see a little bit of a pullback. Again, altcoins do often trade down the few months leading up to the halving. We could see something like this with Kaspa and a lot of other altcoins. It's impossible to say, just something that's happened before. I think that about wraps up the video, guys. I know a very short one today, but again, not too much to talk about. Thanks very much for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Comment down below what coin you want next, or if you think I got anything wrong in the video. Always love hearing from you guys and getting a different perspective on things. I think that's the great thing about having an audience on a space like this. You get to hear lots of different perspectives from lots of different interesting people, which is one of the best things of life, in my opinion, meeting and hearing from new people. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Take care, guys, and peace.